All right, we are live. Hi, everybody. Hi, Iluka.
Hi.
All right, I'm going to read. Hi. I'm going to read the intro and then her bio, and then we'll hop into it. So welcome, witches, mystics, and cosmic souls to A Sip of Stardust. I'm your host, Allie the Cosmic Space Witch, a professional astrologer with an esoteric twist. My specialty is galactic astrology, where I dive deep to explore the macrocosm of the sky and the microcosm of your soul. I look way past the typical forecast, incorporating asteroids, black holes, fixed stars, and the ancient mysteries, to give you an expanded and truly esoteric lens with which to view the grand design. Here, we'll sip on tea and we'll explore the astrology. You can catch new episodes live here on Substack at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the night of the new and full moons, with recordings available the next day, usually sometime later tonight, on all streaming platforms. We'll welcome magical guests, drink handcrafted tea, and decode the myth, magic, and mystery found in the stars and in you. Each guest and conversation will revolve loosely around the archetypal dynamics of the zodiac sign of that night's moon. But these conversations are timeless and can be listened or consumed at any point of the year. Tonight, for the Pisces new moon, the sign that governs art, music, film, imagination, and magic, we'll be chatting with Iluka, a very witchy musician whose work I absolutely adore. I'm a big fan, about all things music, magic, and feminine rage. We will dive into everything from her first tour to her new album and the depth found in her lyrics, as well as the personal journey that got her here. Here's her bio. In the past 2 years, Iluka's career has taken off with a string of viral songs that have quickly landed her a cult following. Her signature style comes with raspy vocals, a hint of cowgirl twang belted over pop anthems, shaken together to make her own unique musical cocktail. Iluka isn't afraid to be outspoken, share her feelings, let out a little rage, or get weird. This unabashed honesty underscores her artistry as she stretches the boundaries of pop with blunt lyrics sweetened by disarmingly catchy songcraft and a bewitching aesthetic. After amassing millions of streams and earning acclaim from Flaunt, Mundane, Rolling Stone, and NME, NME?
Mhm.
And more, the Australia-born and Los Angeles-based singer, songwriter, and disruptor amplifies her vision as loudly as possible on her 2025 full-length album, The Wild, the Innocent, and the Raging. Iluka grew up on a farm in Blue Mountain, Australia, in the Blue Mountains of Australia, where her dad handcrafted guitars as an accomplished luthier.
Mhm.
Okay, luthier. So that's a guitar maker?
Yes.
Okay. His handmade guitars were more than just instruments. They were the foundation of her sonic journey. She learned songwriting early on and drew inspiration from the likes of Kate Bush, David Bowie, and Queen, among others. From the start, Iluka has been driven by a singular vision to create brave music. Her songs are both vulnerable in their storytelling and memorable in their protest. I can't wait to talk with her. So grab a cup and join us in a sip of stardust. Hi, Iluka.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm still in post-tour come down. So I've just been taking it really easy and sleeping lots and just, giving myself a bit of a break. The tour was intense.
Sleeping lots is very Pisces. So you're doing what you should be doing right now. It was such an honor to get to see you play here in LA. I love your music. I've been a fan of your music. But it's just something about that live performance that you can't get via recording. And it was a little intimate setting, and I was just in awe of the crowd and your stage performance and your freaking drummer on point.
Oh, Val is amazing. Yes.
Yeah, so is the guitarist. I was like, oh, yes. I love it. So we wanted to kind of meet and chat before the tour, but everything was a little kind of crazy. And I'm kind of glad that it worked that way. Very Mercury retrograde-esque. Mercury retrograde has you like reassess, reconfigure, realign, but then it makes it better. And now we get to talk about the tour.
Yes. Yeah.
So
And
I
I'm
guess
so much more like earthbound right now. So this is perfect.
so okay, maybe we start from the beginning. Maybe before we get to the tour, let's talk a little bit about you and your upbringing in Australia and what it was
Mhm.
kind of like growing up, or on a farm, around nature, around music, like that was bred into you, right? And I feel like
Mhm.
it's really apparent in your lyrics.
Yeah, I feel so lucky with how I grew up because I had so much space. I was such a like little daydreamer. I had so much space and I would wander around the farm and there was the magic garden and I would ride horses with my mom. And then my dad built guitars and we would play music together. We had this beautiful kind of wraparound. You say porch here, we call it veranda in Australia, but really beautiful and we were on the top of a mountain on top of a hill and it looked over all these beautiful green rolling hills and it was very idyllic and just a very creative place where I feel like I was just able to dream. And I've always been the kind of person who allows myself to dream and gives myself that space. I think because it was so normal as a kid to be able to do that. And yeah, I think having especially a parent who was also a songwriter and I always had musical instruments around. He even had a little, like, very kind of simple 12-track recording desk when I was a kid that he would make music on. And when I was 7, I took my first kind of song, um, put together song to my dad and I said, can we record this on his little 12 track? So since I was 7, I've had a place to go and put down all my music and I feel like I learned to love that process of writing the music but also recording the music because it's always been such a fun free space and it's so cool. I have like albums and albums worth of songs from when I was a child. A lot of terrible songs to get to the good ones obviously, but it was a very beautiful place to just be able to create and dream, which is so much a part of like my personality now.
I think as an astrologer, I'm always trying to see the like astrological side of things, right? And I have read your chart, so I know a little bit about your story, right? But 7, when we turn 7, is when we have our first major Saturn transit. It's like the first Saturn square. We have our Saturn opposition at 14, and then we have our Saturn return roughly around 30. And Saturn is all about like your legacy and your great work and like what it is you came here to like build and leave for the world. And so I find it so interesting that like your first song you like brought to your dad
Wow.
at the age of 7. Like it's very perfect.
That's so cool. I never knew that. I love that.
Yeah, I've got kids, so I'm really into the childhood milestone transits. It makes raising kids a lot easier. Like we have the terrible twos, right? Everybody's like, the terrible twos, the terrible twos. It's like, well, that's when they have their first Mars return. And so they're fiery and they're exerting their will and they're learning to say no. It's not that they're terrible, but they're like stepping into their identity. And so it
Mm.
helps give a framework to issues with authority and things like that. So it's one of my jams. Okay. I have a lot of questions that I have written here for you. We kind of talked about your upbringing in Australia already. Maybe we can talk about what it was like to move from Australia to LA, from a farm, like rich in nature and so much space, to this lovely concrete jungle we live in here.
Yes.
um,
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
yeah. So, what was that kind of like? Again, I've seen your chart and I use you as this like case study for relocation charts because you've made this huge move. A lot of times when you move short distances, your charts do not change, but there's a concept known as a relocation chart where you change the location of your chart and placements in your chart move to different houses. And you have this like lovely Leo first house stellium. So you were like always a performer. You were always
Mhm.
shining, you were always performing. That is your identity, that's your persona. But then when you moved to LA, it all moved into the 10th house of career. And so the world finally got to see it.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating because from a young age, I knew that it was going to happen for me outside of Australia. And I tried for many years, it's a whole process getting the visa. And I had to spend a lot of time here and kind of gather some pieces into place before I was able to actually make the move. So I knew for a very long time that it was going to be not Australia where it was going to happen for me. And I knew from a very young age that yeah, as you said, I've just kind of known that this was what I was here to do, and I've kind of been quite resolved in that. I just it's been frustrating at times, but a lot of the time actually, but I've just kind of known that this is what I'm here to do, and I knew from an early age that it was going to be a long way away from Australia, and that it was going to be the US particularly. So I always knew that this was going to be significant, and I had been trying to do it for a while, and then COVID happened. And so that was really frustrating. And I feel like there was all this kind of build up. And by the time that I did leave, if for anyone that understands who's grown up in any kind of small town, I mean, Australia, I liken to a small town because it is as beautiful and amazing as the people are. It's specifically arts and music and culture, it's very small, and there's a lot of like scarcity mindset because there isn't a whole lot of resources in the arts over there because it's this very small country. So I had been very frustrated. I'd always fought against a lot of things within Australia in terms of always feeling like I needed to be smaller than what I wanted to be. I've always been very theatrical. I like even sonically, my music has always felt like it needed to be really kind of big sounding and cinematic, and that never worked in Australia because everything what often succeeds in Australia is something a little more kind of everything has to be like a little bit smaller. And even I was encouraged growing up to like wear a t-shirt and jeans on stage and be like one of those cool girls that gets along with the boys. That's what I was always encouraged to be in Australia. And I was never that. I've always been so passionate. I've always had this like insatiable thirst for the world, and I've always been very ambitious. And I love the drama. I love dressing up. I love the drama musically, and all the artists that I look up to are the ones that embrace that. So from the beginning, I fought a lot against the what I felt were the confines of Australia and the music industry there. So by the time that I left, everyone was kind of trapped inside during COVID. And I was like chomping at the bit to be over here. And so from the get go, it was already going to be a big kind of fiery chapter because I was really so kind of done. I'd gone through a big breakup. I'd left my entire team slash they'd kind of dropped me in Australia. So every door when I arrived he had literally like slammed shut to the point where it was quite like it felt quite violent because it had all kind of been cut. It was like the universe was like, you're done. You need to shut every door in Australia. You're here now. And that was one of the hardest times in my life, but also when this album started to be written, kind of it felt like out of the ashes. It was everything felt so raw, and it was scary because I really didn't have anything over here. I had no team, nothing kind of around me. But within that, I think for the first time in a very long time, I had this sense of no one's really relying on me for anything right now. Like I can just write whatever songs I want to write. I had this real sense of freedom, and that's where these songs kind of birthed from, out of a struggle, but then also this kind of sense of freedom for the first time, that I'd finally got out of what I felt was this really confined, restrained place. And for the first time, I just had like this whole blank canvas in front of me, and I could do whatever I wanted. And that was honestly, and that led to everything that's now happening for me. So people connecting online, because I was able to get, I think for the first time, really honest and really real about who I am as a person and what I stand for, and just be quite unapologetic and direct about that online. And people started connecting. So it's been a wild chapter and journey. But yes, so grateful for it.
I'm putting my astrologer hat back on. But that was, so 2020, the end of 2020, that was your Saturn return. So like when everything was crumbling and all these doors were shutting, I know a lot of people fear a Saturn return because it is a major crisis moment sometimes, but that everything that is taken from us at that time is not for us. And the
Yeah.
door is shut because Saturn, again, wants us to build our legacy. He wants us to do what we came here to do, our great work. And so if we are off course in whatever sort of way, he will quickly and a little violently shut these doors in our face so that we're forced to go find a door that will open for us.
Mm.
And that was like right in alignment with your Saturn return. And then another thing I wanted to add is, yeah, girl, this is why you have that cult following, is because of your rebel-esque-ness about being like unapologetically authentic. I also I like the classics, Kate Bush, David Bowie, Queen, they're all up there. I'm really into like Fleetwood Mac and Peter Gabriel and like all of these 60, also Bob Dylan, big Bob Dylan fan, but all of these like 60s, 70s, 80s, a little early 90s music. And then I stop. I'm like, nothing new, because it's all very cookie cutter and soulless, and it's all very much the same. And so I don't listen to any new musicians. And then I found you and I was like, oh, wow, this is good. I'm a fan. And I really am.
Mm.
And it's
Thank you.
It's your lyrics, it's your presence, but it's the fact that your songs have such, like, depth and message to them in a time where we don't have that anymore. Songs don't
Yeah.
really have that anymore, although there are some, like, up-and-coming female artists tapping into that feminine rage of the time, so I'm just like, "Ooh, I could vibe with this. I can definitely vibe with this." So let's talk a little bit about the album
Mhm.
and then the tour.
Yes.
So the first song on the album was Haunted One? Was that the first one you did?
Yes,
That's my
it
favorite
was.
song.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that one's
Yeah,
really
that
good.
was
I've been
the
there to the depths of hell, ma'am. I have been there. I resonate.
Mhm.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about like the story behind that song and then how the kind of floodgates opened for you in
Mm.
making this album. And before we do, you you got the pressing of your first album today. It arrived in the mail today.
Yes, yes.
On the Pisces new moon that governs music and sound. Like, of course you did.
That's crazy. Yeah, like, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, but yes, it arrived today.
So tell us a little bit about the like birth of this album.
Yes. So, yeah, Haunted One was the first song written for this album. And it's funny, this is a lot of the time I'll go into the studio and I'll have a very clear idea of what I want to write about, what I want to say, or even the feeling I want to go for if it's not a particular lyrical reference. But Haunted One kind of was one of these songs. I don't know where it came from. I don't know. There was no specific intention when I went into the room, and it just, the way you hear it is kind of the way that it was written, very quickly. A lot of my other songs, I'm kind of known to it, like, kind of be a little bit of a perfectionist in the way that every lyric is, rewritten, and I'm, sometimes pages and pages and pages of lyrics will be written to get one song. And the production process tends to be like really, there's a lot of finessing, but Haunted One wasn't that at all. It kind of just came out, and I loved it, and I didn't change one of the lyrics from the original birth of the song. And I remember it was written in Australia, and at the time, the team that I was with, no one. It was kind of in this demos folder, and no one thought it was particularly. No one ever said it was bad, but some people said it wasn't the right direction, and that they didn't think it was a song that I should release at that time. There was perhaps some comments around the sonic soundscape not being the direction I should go in. So at that time, it kind of just sat in the demos folder until I fast forward a couple of years. I was in LA, and I don't know why. Again, it was one of these moments that I was pulled to share some of it online, and I shared the first verse online, and that was the beginning of a lot of people connected with that, and that was kind of the beginning of me walking around LA in my witchy outfits, was for that song, because that it was such a like stompy song. And I used to get my housemate at the time, who's a photographer and videographer, we would just be like, you want to go walk around LA today and sing the song? So we would just do all these fun videos just walking around LA singing that song. And that was really the start. And I think I realized that sonic soundscape that I've always loved, which is a little bit darker, moodier, swampy, twangy. I was like, oh, I really loved it. And I remember my best friend, who's also very witchy girly in Australia, she loved the song too. And she was always like, what on earth? You need to put this out. So it was kind of just the team in Australia that didn't really get it. But finally, the people of social media spoke, and I put it out. And that was, again, one of the lessons of like, always listen to yourself and your best friends, because they also know you, and put out the stuff that like really excites your soul, because the team around you, as well intentioned as they may be, they don't know what's right for you. And that was just the beginning of me being really honest and leaning into the sonic world that I really loved, and leaning in visually to my witchiness, which perhaps had been a little dulled down in Australia. I felt like I really finally had the space to really lean into that. And so that was, thanks to that song. Oh no.
All right, we are back on Zoom this time. You guys, Mercury is retrograde in the sign of this new moon, and we are in LA where we are having a major heat wave, and my phone just like turned off, made this loud noise, said emergency, and said my phone was excruciatingly hot, and I touched it and it was like crazy hot. So we're over here on Zoom hoping that this works better. I'll just edit the two things together and hope for the best. That's Mercury for you. I knew something was going to happen. I was like, wow, everything is working so good. Like, do you remember what we were saying?
Um,
If not, we can just.
Haunted One. I think I spoke. Haunted One was the first song of the album, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Haunted One is my favorite song. So whatever executive told you that, I have a bone to pick with him.
Yeah.
And again, as an astrologer, I find it just not at all surprising that that was the first song on your album, because what I wrote here when I was like, I want to talk about Haunted One, is I wrote here, this gives Saturn return vibes. Like, that is, the lyrics of that song are so aligned with like being brought down to your knees and being like, I can't live this fucking way anymore. This is not for me anymore. And then the like major like metamorphosis that happens during a Saturn return, where really you step into that like responsibility and duty, and it's like the responsibility of your life, what you came here to do.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that I'm like not surprised that was the first one on the album. And I'm not surprised that was it a man who told you no?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not
It
surprised.
always is.
It's always I'm a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, and right now we're all up in arms because they were having the new Buffy reboot, and then it got canceled, and we're all like, why? And it came out, it was like one male executive who never even watched the original show and made sure to tell them that like every chance he got, who pulled the plug. I'm not surprised.
Not surprised, but like, oh my goodness.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the tour, and then we'll get into some of these more technical questions I have here for you.
Yes.
How was it?
It was amazing. I think the the most significant part about it, so basically, as my fans will know, I've been releasing these songs basically online for the last two and a bit years. And I haven't really been playing shows, and everyone that's connected has connected with me online, right? Which has been amazing, and it's so cool to get comments and messages from people all the time being telling me how much my music has, become a part of their life or affected them in some way. But it doesn't feel completely real, and I didn't realize how much I was missing that real person to person connection until I started playing these shows. And once again, a lot of people warned me that, perhaps the online success wouldn't transfer to and translate to, people buying tickets and coming to the show. And so there was this, that it did feel kind of high pressure, because I felt like I was proving myself. I was like, I'm not just a TikTok or online artist. And it was the most beautiful thing. The very first show was in Brisbane, Australia, and we just done a sound check with my band, and we were coming back from the hotel before doors opened, and we're walking towards the venue, and I knew that this show was basically sold out. So I did know that it was going to be a really special show, but I was walking closer to the venue, and I saw this kind of line of people, a really long line of people kind of curling around the corner. And as we got closer, I was like, oh, they're all dressed really cute. Like, could they? And then realized that they were all my fans waiting at the door before the doors opened. And I was PMSing hardcore.
Oh,
So I was emotional to start with. I don't know what was going on astrologically, but probably something intense. And it was such a overwhelming moment, just people coming up to me and finally like seeing my fans. And that show, I mean all of the shows, but I think because it was my first, it was, people were screaming the lyrics specifically to Wings and Cry Evil. And I just kept having moments during the show where I'd like pinch myself to be like, this is real. And finally, I get to be out here with the fans, and it feels so special. And the kinds of, it's it feels like more than just a live concert. Like, it feels like a real community. And even all the supports of the shows were like, everyone is so, there's like a real kindness, and people showing up for each other in whatever way they want to show up, but just this like really beautiful, I am safe in this space kind of energy. And you can't kind of fake that. And it's just been, every night has been so beautiful how people are in the space and feeling safe to be whoever they want to be in that space. And it's been yeah, honestly, the most special thing I think I've ever experienced. And this was kind of just the first almost like test run, and it's been so much fun. So I'm just like, get me back out there. I want to meet the rest of the fans, so we're working on that now.
yeah. So that was part one of the tour, and
Yes,
then you're gonna
yes.
have part two. I want to come see you again. I have to tell you, that show I went and saw you in LA. That was the first. like local show that I have been to in probably like 15 years. Like I was a little
Wow.
punk rock kid and I was at shows every weekend. There was like local bands that I went and saw all the time in my early 20s. And then I got old and then I have kids and I don't really go out anymore. I have gone and seen like I saw like Fleetwood Mac, I saw Stevie Nicks by
Mm,
herself, I saw like Billy Joel, like big stadium sit downs. It's not the same vibe, you know what I mean? I took my mom to see Peter Gabriel, but
oh, amazing.
I'm obsessed with him. But I haven't been to any like little local shows in so long, and it was like a big part of like my early identity. And I
Mm,
got together like a little group of like witchy women, and we all went, and now they're like all fans. They're just obsessed.
yes. Yay.
It was so good. I'm just like, oh, I love it. Some people aren't always good live, but you
Right, right.
definitely command the stage. The sound is just on point. I had such a blast. I really had such a blast.
Oh, same. Honestly, same.
You're gonna have another LA show for the second tour.
Probably not LA, but California.
Okay. If it's
Yeah.
not too far, I shall come. I have to tell you, people drove. Like, I went and like we got there early because parking is a little tricky. And then we walked to like the Earth Cafe and we got some like sweet treats and some food. And we were staying there in line, and there was this like older couple. I was actually kind of shocked at like the age. They were probably in like
Mm.
their 50s. And he was like, "Is this the only place around here to get coffee?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm here for a show." He's like, "Oh, me too." I'm like, "Oh, yeah. Who are you here for?" And he's like, "Iluka." I was like, "Really?" Because they just don't seem like your demographic. And he's like, "Oh, I love her. I love all these like raging women artists. I drove from Santa Barbara."
You kidding?
His wife had no idea.
Wow.
His wife was just along for the ride. Like he was the fan.
Oh my God, I needed to meet this guy. What a
I,
legend.
he
Wow.
was the
That's
fan.
so
And then he was
cool.
like, "Do you know any other new music? Blah, blah, blah." Like, I don't really listen to music. And then he was telling me, like, "Oh, look at this chick and this chick." Like, she's like, and I was like, "Oh, wow." Because we were in line for a minute. I was like, "Oh, it's adorable." But he drove from Santa Barbara.
Oh my God, that's so cool. I did speak to a bunch of fans at different shows who driven from various places. So yeah, that was wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I got some more questions for you. If I can read my handwriting, it's so bad. Okay. So your music is very witchy, which is why I love it so much. And it's rooted in these like dark, feminine archetypes, and it's riddled with mythic motifs, which honestly speak to my soul. Like that's the basis of everything that I love. Tell me a little bit about your witchy awakening. Have you always been into the strange and unusual?
I love that you've asked this question because I get to talk about one of my favorite people. So I unfortunately she's not around anymore, but I had a grandma, Mimi, and she was the witchy woman. So it runs in my blood. She was incredibly witchy, and so she grew up. Actually, she spent a lot of time in Singapore, so a lot of her mysticism and occult comes from that part of the world. Her occult leanings come from that part of the world, and also in British. So she grew up in Britain and also Singapore. So it was like this, and to add to that, I also have Scottish and Irish and
Mm.
deep, deep Irish ancestry. So there's always definitely been a strong like Celtic spirituality in me and in my soul. But my grandma, so she was very witchy, and from a very young age, she actually was psychic. And so would, she was very open about her ability to traverse into other worlds. And from a very young age, I thought that was quite normal. And so it was her and my auntie, who's also very psychic and very witchy. And the kinds of books they were reading a lot of occult literature. And so my auntie from a very young age was always showing me books to read, that were always about, yeah, magic, the occult, mysticism. And my grandma and they both lived together. So we would go and visit them. And it was just kind of normal to speak about um, meeting with spirits and other worlds basically. And so my dad used to tell me lots of stories of growing up, and like they were kind of proper witchy. They My dad grew up doing like seances when he was 5 years old in their house. And he talks about like coming down the stairs after in the morning after having like some dreams during the night, and my grandma would greet him and would say things like, oh, uncle, your great uncle John wants to say sorry. He was just trying to connect with you last night. And he would say like he'd had this dream where he was in a room and he felt some presence was quite trying to move towards him, and that spooked him out. So my dad, I always used to love the stories that my dad told about my grandma. I mean, to the point where she would even sit in I'm not sure what it's called, but she would sit in a chair, and my dad always described this as being quite kind of spooky, but she would sit in a chair and her kind of eyes would roll back and she would be writing and channeling
Like
um
like
spirits.
mediumship. Yeah.
Mediumship, yeah. So I always knew that, and I she passed when I was still quite young, so I have this yearning to ask her so many questions that I never asked her when I was young. But from a very early age, I was very aware that there was a lot more going on than just the physical world that we can see before our eyes. I knew, and I was very open to that. I only realized that they were maybe a little weird when I started telling other kids about my grandma and my auntie, and they were like, what? And I was like, what? This isn't normal. So from a very young age, I was very open to that world and very drawn to it, because I've always felt, I think deep inside, that we're a part of something greater, and that there are people who can tap into certain things. And for me, I think what I've gotten from my, grandma and auntie was a similar kind of channel, but my channel is I make music from my channel, so they can talk to spirits, and I make music, but I think it's the same place that's all coming from. And my dad always used to talk about it, which is actually I'm very into Jungian psychology, and my dad always used to talk about kind of what Jung talks about, being the world soul. And my dad always used to say it was like this pool that we all have access to. We all have antennas that we can kind of tune into this pool. And, whether we're writing a book or whether we're talking with spirits or writing music, it's like one pool that we're all and I would love to get your take on that, and from an astrological point of view, because that makes so much sense to me as well, that we're all connected to this greater thing, and we're all being affected by this thing that we're all a part of. We can't escape that. We're all connected to it. So yeah, from a very young age, that I was very open, and just I've always loved books and knowledge and mythology and mysticism, and it's kind of I've just always been very open to it, and very inspired by it. And I think most definitely comes from ancestry, and specifically Irish, and that kind of Celtic spiritual um draw, I guess. And then definitely my grandma, and just seeing how she was so open to she was just very quirky too. She had like funny names for everyone, and she was like the OG weird girl. And I just, yeah, love her. She is so much, yeah, the reason that I kind of am who I am today, I think.
That was the most Pisces moon answer I could have possibly asked for. Pisces governs dreams. It governs mysticism, mediumship, psychic senses. It governs music. And it governs that like collective, unconscious, archetypal realm that like Jung is talking about, that we
Yes.
kind of tap into through dreams and these weird like psychic experiences. You covered like all the bases there. Like
Wow.
couldn't have been a better answer for tonight's moon. And it's funny, it just reminds me like the first time I reached out to you and was like, do you want to come on the podcast? It was for a Leo moon because Leo governs like performers, right? And you've
Mm.
got this like Leo stellium. And I was like, oh, this would be nice before she goes on her tour and we talk about it. But I feel like this is so much better because now we get to talk about like the depths of what a performer or an author or somebody is kind of tapping into when they tap in. And that's where all my questions are about to go. But when they kind of tap into these archetypal motifs, right? And you do that
Mm.
so beautifully. Okay, let's see what I got here. Um, okay, so this is perfect. And you actually even used some of these words earlier, and I like kind of smirked. So a Pisces new moon is often seen as a void where all possibilities exist. How do you approach this blank canvas? You said blank canvas earlier. I was like, oh, I
I
wrote that on
did.
my questions. How do you approach this? How do you approach the blank canvas of a new song? Does it feel like a structured process or more like a psychic download? And it sounds like for you, it's a little bit of both. And I feel like your Virgo sun is the perfectionist, right?
Hmm.
And then you're tapping
Hmm.
into these. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of approach that like blank canvas of writing a song.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it can go both ways for me. Sometimes it is for like Haunted One. I just showed up in the room. I had no idea what was going to come out. And that just literally kind of came out. And that did feel very psychic. Other times, um, it is more, yeah, like a bit of a perfectionist, like really having to work at it. And the initial kind of idea of a song will always come very magically and psychically. But for example, Crucify Me, that was so difficult. The initial melodic idea of it came quite quickly, but then saying what I wanted to say succinctly in like a 3 minute pop song was so difficult. And I've talked about this a lot, but there ended up being 24 typed pages, like Word document, because there was just so much I wanted to say, and we just had to cut and cull. So it can be a little bit of both. There is that original um, download, I guess, which can feel quite psychic and magical. And sometimes that does just, in the case of Haunted One, that's what it ends up being. But a lot of the time, there's a lot of kind of editing after that fact. And I love just in the initial phases letting myself just be open and saying all the things that I want to say. And then, the next session or the next date, that's when you kind of start to cut and cull. But yeah, it can be a bit of both.
I would love to see some of those pages. I think that you need to start a Substack. I think that Substack would be so great for you. And that's where maybe you can share some of those, you know, longer bits and like
Totally.
kind
The
of like,
verses that never made
which are probably just as good,
it.
I'm sure there's so much depth in there. But yeah, I think you need to start a
I
sub.
do. I do. I think I do.
We
Yes.
want you over here. And so I love it here. Everybody is so supportive. There's no ads, there's no influencers, there's no hate in the comments. Everybody's just hyping each other up. And
Oh
it
my God.
really is so great for like independent artists and people who
Mm,
want like depth and substance and not just like little reels or memes or anything. Like you find your people over here. I love it.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay. So we've talked before about the like aesthetic world building that you also obsess over. Tell me a little bit about how you go about kind of creating these worlds because in your videos, in your music videos, they're very cinematic and you could tell that there's a lot of like attention to like aesthetically pleasing detail put into
Hmm.
those. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of go about making these fantasy worlds.
Mm. Firstly, am I love film and I love fantasy specifically as well. So I've always had that. Even when I write music, I have a very visual world that is forming in my mind as I'm writing a song. Like I can already see what the music video is going to look like, even for the songs that I don't get to make visuals for. But I've always been a very visual person. My mom is a photographer and graphic designer, has been that her whole life. So she's always been very much the visual person. So maybe there's a little element of that, but I love visuals, and I would say it is just as important as the musical side of it, because it's these worlds that I want people to be able to step into. It isn't just a song that exists on its own. It really is like a whole experience that I want people to have. And so, yeah, I think, was the question how I kind of begin world
Yeah.
building?
And I guess it starts from the beginning.
It starts from the very beginning as I'm writing the song. And it's always very color oriented as well. I see color very quickly in songs. And yeah, I just kind of keep building it and building it from that initial vision. I get on Pinterest and start getting ideas for the wardrobe. But yeah, from the very beginning of a song, there's always a visual world there immediately.
I think that the first, because like I found you because the algorithm, right?
Mm.
And the algorithm does know what's up sometimes. And I think the first video I saw of yours, it had the manor from Charmed. Like you were filming out front of the
Mm.
Charmed Manor. And that's what made me stop because I was like, oh, that's the Charmed Manor. Let's see what this chick has to say. And then I was like, oh, wow, this is good. Follow. And then that was when you were still kind of releasing the songs. I think you only had a couple out thus far. And so I watched you like release Crucify Me and all these songs. And I was like, oh, and like tease them with like just the little clips. And I'm like, oh my God, she's brilliant. So good.
Thank
I
you.
am a legitimate fan. Like I really am. Okay.
Oh.
I have more questions. All right. So I know you're a reader. I know you're a
Yes.
reader. You like to read all the books, Virgo Sun, of course. And I know you're pulling inspiration from the books that you read. I've seen you mention like Women Who Run with Wolves or When God Was a Woman. What
Mm,
are some, very good. I have both of them. Very
so
good.
good.
Yeah. What are some of your favorites? Give us some personal recommendations for these like witchy, feminine rooted kind of books that have inspired you and your music.
Mm. So I did just recently finish When God Was a Woman, and that blew my mind. It's definitely for those wanting to read it. It's very in depth. Like it's heavy. Not in terms of emotionality, but in terms of
It's like about this
the,
thick. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
I'm looking at my shelf. It's like
Yeah,
about,
there's
yeah,
a
but it's
lot there.
good.
But I thought that was such a beautiful book. Just in the way that I mean, talked about, we all began as a matriarchy basically. And I thought that was so beautiful, and it was showing, I guess proving that was is basically what that book is doing. But I have always been so drawn to the concept of matriarchy and it being the most natural um form of a human system, centering children, not centering women, centering children, everyone. And so that book really set it in a very, I guess, succinct way. So that's been a recent book that has been amazing. I'm trying to think because I go through phases. When I'm touring, I'm in a big fantasy phase because I can't take in facts or figures when I'm touring. I want to escape. So Fourth Wing, um, that series, the Rebecca Yarros series has been my go-to whilst touring. I mean, it's dragons. For those that don't know, it's essentially about a military school, and these kind of dragon riders, and it's a heroine at the center of the story, and her love affairs and dragons. I mean, anything with dragons, I adore. So that's been a lot of fantasy recently. Um, oh, I mean, I'm trying to think. Yeah, right now, I remember first reading The Bell Jar, and that had such a profound impact on me. And I think the internal world of a woman. So I haven't read it for a little while, but that is one book that has had a real impact on um yeah, how I see myself, and yeah, just the internal workings of a woman. I think she does it. It's such an incredible book. I would say oh, the French writer who I Anise Nin. I'm not sure if and I know, I think it is Anise Nin, so Anais and Nin, and she's a French writer who has written a lot of books, but she published her diary entries, and her diary entries, and so she's released a couple of books of just her diary entries, and so she was having a lot of she was kind of in the bohemian writer scene in I guess around the 20s and 30s and 40s, and I just love her. She's very sensual in the way she writes. She's very there's like an eroticism about it, but not necessarily because of sex, just in the way she writes about the eroticism of life. And that those books, so her diary entries, have had a huge influence on me and just how I see the everyday world. Again, it's just the kind of internal workings of her mind. And that's the stuff I love. I do tend to love like a diary entry style book because I want to know that messy kind of nitty gritty inner monologue that's going on during life. I love that. And she was writing at a time as a female writer, surrounded by a lot of um, men and a lot of expectations around who she should be and not be. But she was just able to still live this like absolutely dazzling, sensual life. So Anise Nin, any of her diary entries have also been a huge part of my uh, literary awakening. On While I was talking about eroticism, there's also an essay by Audre Lorde. So this isn't a book; it's an essay, and I'm pretty sure it's Uses of the Erotic is what it's called. I will make sure that that's correct. But it's by Audre Lorde, and she basically, it's an essay talking about, again, this idea that life is erotic and that it's not related to sex in any way, though of course sex should be erotic, but it's the eroticism of the everyday, and how you do each ritual, which your morning coffee, or the way you see the world, the way you move through the world, it's so sensual and erotic. And I think these female authors like Audre Lorde, like Anise Nin, I think they've really, because I think that's the witchiest thing ever, is being really in touch with life like that, and being really in touch with the sensuality of life. I just think that's so witchy. So a lot of writers, like, yeah, particularly Audre Lorde, I mean, any of Audre Lorde's books also, I mean, the way she writes is so beautiful, and also, connected to not just the sensuality of life, but social justice and politics, which I think she's able to still write so richly and beautifully while tackling a lot of really heavy subjects. So yeah, she's one of my favorites.
It's another reason why I like your songs is that you touch on those things. Do you keep in a journal? I feel like you.
Oh my God, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I live by my journal. I have since I can remember. I mean, one day I'm gonna have a room just full of my journals because yes,
You're gonna have
always
to
journaling. I
publish
have
that.
since I was a tiny. Yes, totally. Yeah.
I bet you it's good. I'm sure it's good. Okay, well, there were a bunch of books that I have never even heard of, so now I'm gonna have to go dive into some of these things. Big fan of Sylvia Plath, and just
Mm,
like her life is
mm,
just so tragic. And what's so
mm.
sad is that, most people are just like, oh, she offed herself. She stuck her head in an oven. And that's all people really know about her. A lot of people don't even
Mm.
know of her works or anything like that. And they don't even know of her life. Like, I would have stuck my head in an oven too. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's so rough. And then even after her death, her horrible, abusive husband is the one who she left him, but he still afterwards somehow got a hold of her estate. And so he has all of her money, all of her, like, the rights of all of her writings, everything. And it's like she stuck her head in an oven because of you.
yeah. I mean, that's just such a snapshot of a female artist and like
Mhm.
how hard they had to fight to be seen, to be published, to be taken seriously. It's just such yeah, a sad reminder of female artists. And just I always think of all the female artists who we don't know about,
We don't
who
know because their husbands, or the
because yeah,
husbands who became famous
yeah,
off of a work of art or writing or a scientific idea, and it
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
even theirs. It was the
yes,
wife's. Yeah.
yeah,
And that story is not unique. Like,
no,
there's so many stories that we know of now.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
imagine how many we don't. Exactly. It's so
yeah.
sad. Okay. Let's see what I got for you. Okay. Pisces is ruled by Neptune. And right now, the Pisces moon is actually sitting in a conjunction to Neptune. It will get closer as we pass the equinox. Neptune is the planet of illusions, of fantasy, of art, of dreams, of music, and film. How does the musical or the visual or the cinematic elements influence the ways that you compose your songs? I noticed that you watch a lot of films. You post a lot about the different films that you're watching. How do these stories inspire your music? So we kind of talked about like book inspirations. What are some of your, and we talked about some of your music inspirations, Kate Bush
Mm.
and whatever. What are some of your film inspirations?
Oh my God, there's so many. I mean, I have a fascination for a lot of obscure like art house films from like the 60s and 70s. Um, ones particularly like Valerie and Her Week of Wonders, Daisies. If anyone's into kind of occult horror that is from the 60s and 70s, I would recommend those two because and they also center around the female heroine. And then of course I love the Guillermo del Toro and a lot of the gothic um, films. I mean, Pan's Labyrinth. I don't know how many times I've watched it, but so many. And every time I watch it, there's some kind of significance that, little something that I missed. It's so full of uh yeah, there's so much in that film. And that had a significant impact on me when I first watched it, and even Crimson Peak. I mean, any Guillermo film. I love Frankenstein, the new Frankenstein. I love the worlds he builds. I love people always laugh because he's such a sweet uh, man, right? He's known to be such a sweet, kind man, and then he builds these, oftentimes starkly kind of often frightening, unsettling worlds. I mean, Pan's Labyrinth, is incredibly unsettling, and I love that about him. I love that he can create these really unsettling, but visually beautiful, and there's always something to pull out from all of the films, and they're so rich, and they're so full of layers, and love Guillermo. I've always been a huge Studio Ghibli, I don't know which one it is, fan. So I love anime. I think the director, um what's his name? Why can't I think of the director's name? Um, you know who I'm talking about, who did all of the classic Studio Ghibli films. They're also as well for me so rich in. There's so much mysticism in there, and his characters are always there's always like a really strong, very nuanced female character. I feel like from the get-go, he was just writing really beautiful characters, female characters particularly. I mean, Kiki's Delivery Service is one of my comfort films that I always return to. So yeah, I love anime. I think it's very magical and fantastical. I just started watching the Last Crystal.
Oh, the
Did you
Dark
ever watch
Crystal.
sorry, the Dark Crystal, not the Last Crystal. I was
I
thinking of
am
the
a
Last Unicorn. The
Oh, the
Dark
Last
Crystal.
Unicorn. Both of those are
Both of
top
those,
five.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. A mix of I actually the Last Unicorn I watched a lot as a kid. I think my parents must have had it. I don't know why we had it, because no one else around me knew that film. But that was one of the films I watched a lot as a kid, and yes, I just started watching The Dark Crystal and am obsessed.
Are
Yeah,
you
it's
watching the
so great.
movie or the show?
So I've watched the movie and I'm watching the show now, and
The
it's
show's so
brilliant.
sad because like every Gelfling is about to die because you already have seen what happens
I
next.
know, I know.
But the Dark Crystal, I am a big fan of Jim Henson in general. Anything with a puppet, anything
Yes.
I am just literally obsessed with. The Dark Crystal was like key to my like spiritual awakening. Like there was just one day where that movie just made so much sense. I'm like, oh, I
Mm.
see what they're doing here,
Yeah.
with the
The
not
like stripping of the essence and
yes.
the yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the two Gelflings having to like unite the crystal, and then we find out
Yeah.
that like the Skeksis are like they're just half of two beings. Like when one dies, the elder dies too, and like the beautiful duality and the having to like unite the crystal. I am obsessed with that
Yeah.
movie. The Last Unicorn as well. My partner, um he's a musician too. He like samples bits and turns it into songs, and he doesn't play any instruments, but he makes songs. And when our kids were really little, you know, there wasn't a lot of music for kids that was appropriate. You know what I mean? Like we're not gonna have them listening to like Taylor Swift and it's like this boyfriend and that boyfriend or whatever. And so he was like, I'm gonna make them an album. And so he made one called The Little Unicorn, and it takes samples from The Last Unicorn, like little lines from the unicorn, and then he wrote like really deep, like lyrically deep, like rap album, but it's like conscious rap. And but it
Wow.
was like for the girls to do and sing. He like recorded them like doing it, and we have that. And it is so good. It's like just talking about like, you know, political, not necessarily political, but like social issues,
Mm,
but like from a children's perspective, it's
I
like
love that.
is very good. And so
What an amazing thing for the kids to have.
yeah,
Wow.
It was really, and
So
that's what
cool.
we would listen to like in the car instead of like the radio, because the radio we're just like, what is all this, you know?
Yeah.
And so we would just listen to it like over and over and over and over again until they knew it, all of the words. Well, he recorded himself saying it, and so we would listen to that over and over again until he knew the words, and then he recorded them. And yeah, it's so good. It's really so good.
So cute.
It took samples from that movie, and so we've seen that movie a million times. And of course, the soundtrack is all America.
America. Yeah. So cool.
Good. So
Yeah.
good. Yeah, those are, I love those movies. Those are the best. Okay, so we talked a little bit about music, books, movies. Now we have to talk about TV because I know
Mm.
your song Witch Girls,
Hmm.
you like consumed all of the witchy media. I was like my favorite all-time favorite show. Well, now it's Buffy, but when I was a kid, it was Bewitched. I had every Bewitched episode on VHS. I would watch them over and over and over and over again to the point where, like, the first season, I have every line memorized of that whole first season because I only had, I mean, I didn't have much to watch. We didn't have cable. I had my
Mm.
VHSs, and Bewitched was my jam. I love Bewitched so much. And then as I got older, I watched a lot of Charmed. I love Charmed so much. Even Buffy has that like female heroine. I'm reading a lot of books right now that are like Buffy studies books. So they're like
Oh.
academic dissertations pretty
Mm.
much on the like mythic motifs found in Buffy and how
Wow.
like rooted in the heroine's journey and how it has all of these like archetypal depths to it and how it has a very like Jungian lens with which the characters are all like parts of herself. And I'm obsessed. I'm like obsessed with these books right now.
Wow.
I just bought a couple new ones, but yeah, the one I'm reading right now is called Buffy and the Heroine's Journey, and it is a
Ooh.
literal masterpiece. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the TV that inspired you, because you can definitely see it in a lot of your music videos. Charmed, even the little Bewitched, and the little
Yes, the
you
little
know, yeah.
nose twinkle. Yes. Loved Bewitched. It was funny. It was my cousins had the box set of Bewitched. So that was the only time I'd watch it when I would go over to their place and watch it. And I just loved the outfits. I loved that 60s aesthetic. I thought she was so gorgeous and quirky and cute with her little nose twinkle. And it was such a different um personification of a witch, right? She wasn't an old hag, she wasn't frightening. She great style and she was adorable. And it was obviously still very much made in the 60s, and there was obviously a lot of problems with it, but like just so fun, so cute. I loved Sabrina growing up. Again, I she was just this kind of regular American girl who was a witch, and I thought that she was so cool. And again was such a different it was such a different idea of what a witch could be. It was just your regular American teenager, and loved Sabrina, loved the new version of Sabrina and how dark they went with it. I thought like that was such a cool way to remake it and to make it. I don't know, there was, did you watch it, the new?
I didn't watch
It
it, no,
was
because I felt like it
really,
changed. Like Sabrina was one of my favorites too. I watched Sabrina all the time, and I was just like, "Oh, this is wildly different." And I
yeah.
don't know. I've got a bit of the tism. I like things like the way that they
Mm,
are, and I'm like, that's too big of a change. So I did not watch that one, but I know that a lot of people
yeah,
like.
I loved it. I loved how dark they went with it. There was a lot of references, to the underworld. I loved the how dark it was. But honestly, yeah, anything witchy, anything fantasy related, I love. I'm trying to think of some recent.
Have you seen
Um,
Discovery of Witches?
yes, I was just thinking of that one. Yes, with
Yeah.
Teresa Palmer. Teresa Palmer is the actress. Yes, love the discovery of witches.
Love.
That was, yeah,
It's so good.
loved.
I got the books
Um,
for Christmas. I haven't read the books yet, but I'm going to.
oh, yes. And I mean, I was always a huge Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, they were absolute classics as well to me, anything fantastical. I mean, even oh my gosh, um what's the with the Scottish woman and she touches the stones? Um
Outlander?
Outlander,
Yeah.
yes.
I
I got
haven't
very
seen
into
that one. That's
Outlander.
one of the ones that I still need to
Yes.
watch. Yeah.
Again, beautiful, and she's so witchy. I haven't watched it for a while, and I think there is a new series coming out because I've seen lots of billboards about it. But I loved Outlander. I mean, The Witcher as well. I think that is so fun and fantastical. Yeah, the
Have you
Dark Crystal
seen
that I've started that I'm loving.
what was that?
The Dark Crystal that we were talking about before, that, yeah, loving that. I'm trying to think of other
Have you
witchy
seen
things.
on Amazon Wheel of Time?
You know what? I started that and I haven't finished it yet.
It's
But
good. They canceled
it's
it
good.
after like two seasons, I think,
Oh
but it's
no.
also based off a book series which has 15 books series. It's crazy long, but
Wow.
I was loving it. I normally don't like a lot of new shows. I really, really, really love Discovery of Witches. It was so well done, so
So
well
well done.
researched,
Yeah. Yeah.
so well researched. Um, really believable in the way
Yes.
the magic presented itself.
Yeah.
And Wheel of Time also, I was like, wow, this is good. I was so sad when they canceled it.
Oh, that's so sad.
Like it. It's good. It's good. But yeah,
I'll have to get back into that.
I was a really big Bewitched fan. Even in high school, I went through this like 60s mod phase where I was making my mom like sew me like pretty much like go-go
Yes.
dresses. And I would dress like Samantha with like the makeup and the earrings and I had little white go-go boots and everything.
So fun.
Such a weird kid. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I had any friends. But yeah, I definitely went through the like very like 60s mod phase and it was all because of Samantha. I have been I'm now my kids have watched it. We have them on DVD. They've watched them
Mm,
so many times. They probably know more about those episodes than me. I think they've even probably watched them more than me. Like I'm definitely putting that on to the next generation, the obsession.
yes.
We're also really big fans of Alf over here. We even named our dog Alf again with the puppets. You know, the alien.
Oh, love. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, that's so cute.
All right, let's see what we got here. So Pisces governs music, right? And music has a unique way of like dissolving boundaries between people. Do you view performance as a form of ritual or maybe like a collective meditation? Like, how do you go about performance on stage, but
Mm.
also in your like music videos? Like, are you thinking of this in a sort of like ritualistic kind of way, like in a spiritual way?
I am. Yeah, I think particularly I treat them both quite differently. I think the the kind of ritual nature of playing live, and I think about a lot, I always will set an intention before I go on stage, and I'm also very aware of energy and cleansing afterwards, because you're in a room where I'm kind of this very open vessel, where people are experiencing these things and we're all kind of experiencing these emotions, but I'm very open on stage. So which is what I love to be in, whatever's coming up in that room. Like I want to be able to feel and transform it, or express it in whatever way is needed in that moment. So I do think of that as being a ritual in itself, and just being very intentional about that and creating a space where whatever needs to come up can come up, and creating a very safe space. So that does very much feel like a ritual. And from quite a young age, I've always been involved in like women's circles and the idea of opening up a circle and then closing it at the end, and being very aware that in those spaces, yeah, if you're very open in those spaces, it's important to make sure that you close those spaces and then clear yourself, or and so that idea of ritual, I feel lucky that I had quite a grasp of, through doing stuff like women's circles, because it is a ritual and you are in a room and sharing a lot of energy, quite intense energy. I mean, my song's particularly quite intense, so very aware of that, and how to kind of go about opening and closing that space, which I think is really important. And then in terms of the visuals and videos, that is quite a different process, because it's, I guess I like to make sure the day of filming, we're all feeling, I always like to make sure that I'm very much in my body. I'm someone that has a history of like a bit of disassociation. So for me, even playing live or specifically doing any kind of music video, I'll always start the day with some kind of embodied practice to make sure I'm like in my body, because it's very easy to, like, especially a hectic shoot day, to be kind of up here and not really in my body and just like floating through. But I'm doing this so that I can be in my body and share that kind of experience. So yeah, and I guess like the visual stuff as well, it's a different, it's kind of a different beast. I get time to be brainstorming for weeks leading up to it, and deciding what like little motives I want to include, and what colors and what that color represents. And for Witch Girls, it was so fun because it was quite a big shoot day, and just coming up with all of the little motifs and witchy little objects around the place, and kind of giving them a significance in the song. So that's always super fun. But I do think of both as a ritual in some way, and definitely like a part of a like spiritual practice. I feel like my whole project is kind of a spiritual practice for me, so every element and part of it does feel quite spiritual in some way.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the lyrics. When my kids were young, well, first, when I was young, I listened to a lot of like stuff that now I would not want my kids listening to. A lot of low key, suicidal, depressive type music, and it impacted me. And so when my kids were young, I made sure to teach them that like songs are spells, and that especially what you're listening to in your adolescence, it never leaves you. Like you could turn one of these songs on today and I will still know every single word, even if I haven't listened to them in decades. Like it sits within the subconscious mind. And so I've always told them to listen to the lyrics and like figure out what the message is in a song and what the song is telling you, because you are going to be chanting it. If you're singing along, if you're listening to it, you're chanting it, and this has an impact on you. And so I feel like I have, especially my youngest, she's always like, she'll hear a song like on a radio or somewhere we're at, and she's like, "Did you hear that? Like, what are they saying?" Like, she's really good at like listening to lyrics. And so I'm a firm believer that like songs are spells. And this is why I love your music so much, because these are the anthems that so many women across, and apparently middle-aged men across the world are chanting right now. And they have such profound messages. So tell me a little bit about your process when it comes to the messages you want to instill in your songs, because each and every one has a really profound, not even that hidden message where you're just like, yes, this is needed right now.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a particular, I mean, I'm a absolutely believe that songs are spells. I don't think I um sit down and say the world needs to hear about this right now. I would love to be that kind of confident that all my songs would reach the world, but I think more so for me, it's these songs are just where I'm at in that moment. You know, if I'm feeling rage about a certain thing, that's what I'm writing about. And so there often doesn't actually tend to be a lot of thought of the audience, to be honest, with these songs. It was, and maybe there was a part of me that was like, oh, it'd be so cool if a whole crowd was singing along to these choruses eventually, but I'm not writing the songs. It's kind of where I'm at and what I'm feeling in that moment. So that's, yeah, kind of the way that I write. It's whatever, yeah, I'm feeling drawn and inspired or just frustrated
Yeah.
and angry towards.
That kind of brings me to this other question here. So, um, you're like a self-described witch girl, right? And you often weave mythology and history into your songwritings. Pisces rules the collective unconscious. That seems sort of concept that like Carl Jung touches on.
Mm.
This is the basement of the psyche. When you're pulling from these like ancient archetypes, do you feel like you are writing your own story? Or are you acting as a vessel for a larger, louder, feminine energy, or maybe a little bit of both?
Oh, I think both,
Yeah, that's what I think.
because I think when you're tuning into your own personal story, the more you get like really real with yourself and like the depths of your soul, what you end up actually doing is tapping into something a lot larger and, you know, the collective unconscious and it's story as old as time. So definitely both. And I've realized the more personal I get, and it often becomes more applicable to the collective
Mhm.
and people connect with it more. So that's been really beautiful, seeing how there's like a dance between them.
Yeah, I wrote here somewhere that the reason why I think that the internet has grabbed a hold of your music is because in tapping into your own soul and your own experience, you are tapping into the collective
Mm.
experience of so many of us because these are like, and Carl Jung talks about this. This is the archetypal trajectory. And even that book that I'm reading right now on Buffy and the heroine's journey, it talks about how all women are going through this heroine journey in their lifetime and how it's different from the hero's journey for men, and how really a lot of it, and you talked about this a little bit when you touched on the matriarchy, and how a lot of it is centered around children. You know, Buffy
Mm.
doesn't have a child of her own, but she raises her little sister after her mother dies, and that's her stepping into that matriarch role.
Mm.
I always like to point out when I'm talking about like mythology that we were first and foremost matriarchal in our expression as humanity. Our most ancient cultures were matriarchy, and we were connected to the goddess and agriculture. We were agricultural societies where we lived in one area and we moved with the seasons and we planted
Mm.
and we grew and we were connected to the goddess, and the men and women were working together, and the focus was on the children, the next generation, raising them up, they're going through their rites of passage and all of these things. And then it was particularly the Indo-European pagan, well, first they were pagan and then they were monotheistic and Abrahamic faiths that were nomads that would travel into different cultures in or with their herds of sometimes sheep or sometimes cattle, and they were the warring cultures, and they were patriarchal, and they all revered a war god. And we still see this today. Yahweh is a war god. He was a pagan deity. And then morphed into this like all father. And so the main problem that I see in our society is that the three main religions are warring religions, and we will always have this like warring patriarchal archetypal dynamic prevalent if we do not see this like rise and rebirth of what was severed and what was, and that was the divine feminine, this like repressed archetypal feminine that we see bubbling up. And I love to watch this happening. I see it happening in my clients. I see it happening in the world. Your song speaks so beautifully to that. And I think that's what a lot of us resonate with in your music, is that we're all feeling this like resurrection of the feminine and that need for like feminine rage. You know, there you have a line in one of your songs, Woman Gone Mad, which is another one that I absolutely love. And you say, they'll shake their heads and say, well, she's gone insane. But honey, look around at everything that's at stake. I don't see how you cannot be mad, a little crazy, angry, raging, ready for change with what is going on and what is at stake. And that song, I think, speaks to so many of our fucking souls right now, because, like, yeah, maybe I look a little like I've lost it. You should be losing it too. Like, how
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. I
You
think
know?
if you have humanity left in you, you are losing it a little bit right now. You are going a little insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Um, all right. You touched on this a little bit, I think, in the last question that I asked you, but I want to expand on it. So, right now, we are currently navigating some like really heavy Neptunian waters that pulls us out of our body. How do you stay grounded while constantly tapping into the ethereal or the emotional realms for your art?
Mm. I think it helps that I'm a Virgo, earth sign. I have always been very kind of rooted to the earth, but in order to kind of maintain that groundedness there, I do a lot of rituals. And yeah, as I was talking about earlier, whether it's, pre or post show, like opening and closing a space, cleansing myself with sage, or any kind of ocean. I love the ocean. Being in the ocean, being around the ocean is very grounding to me. Any kind of nature, mountains are very grounding to me. Being a mountains girl. But yeah, every day I have to have some kind of embodied practice, because I am someone with it that can disassociate, or like be in those realms up there in the creative realms. Any kind of exercise in my body, or like meditating, yeah, Pilates, yoga. I love even running. I love running. I live right next to a lake, so I love running around the lake. um yeah, any kind of practice that just like gets me moving and right into my body. I do try to do that every morning. Otherwise I do, yeah, tend to, in the industry that I'm in, particularly in having to be so kind of engaged like online or in the world, I really feel like to maintain my center, I have to do a lot of kind of, yeah, being in my body. I've done a lot of like somatic healing over the years. So any somatic practices are great. I also love cooking for myself and making that a ritual at the start of the day, end of the day, when I kind of close up my space of like needing to connect with the world, or the team, or online, closing that space and getting to like make a nourishing meal for myself. I find that very grounding, because you're doing it for yourself. It's such a like beautiful self-love.
exercise. So yeah, they're just a few of the, and also and again, I'm working on this because I've always been one of the kids like in the classroom who was a daydreamer. My mind could waft and I have a million fun fantasy stories going on up there. And like, I would happily kind of be tuned out. Was often called the space cadet. um, and look, I love daydreaming and I think sometimes it's really beautiful. I mean, a lot of the time, I love to let myself go into those spaces, but I'm learning also that when I'm going about my day, I think presence is also really beautiful and very grounding, and very important, again, to the work that I do, and presence in connecting with people along the way, whether it's the local barista at your coffee shop, um, having some form of connection with someone that you walk past and smiling at them. And I think in the past also, like, I've been a stoner in the past and I don't smoke weed anymore, and it works for some people, doesn't work for others, and I don't think it works for me. But I think when I was a stoner again, there was just like not a lot of presence in the everyday. So I'm really trying hard to bring that into every part of what I do, especially on the road as well. This kind of presence, and that immediately like pulls you into your body when you're paying attention to exactly what is happening around you.
Yeah. Your Virgo placements definitely help with that.
Yes.
And Virgo's all about like health and making sure that there's like physical, mental, emotional equilibrium. I don't think it's just your Virgo sun that helps with that, but I think it's particularly your Saturn in the sixth house, because Saturn is like structure and what we're very serious about. And the sixth house is like daily routines. And so I like that a lot of what you said was like a daily practice for you. Like you're
Yeah.
doing this on the daily. I have nothing in my sixth house. I need so much help with that. Like I really do. I got a Virgo first house and a Virgo Mars, but I do not have the structure or the discipline. And I feel like your Saturn in the sixth is that structure and that discipline to those daily routines. And in the business that you're in, I'm so glad that you have that, because it really does.
Yes.
You really, really need it. I
Yeah.
also was a stoner. I mean, I was a severe drug addict in my 20s, like hard drugs until my Saturn return. And then after, I still smoked weed, and I convinced myself that like it wasn't that big of a deal, because I had
Yeah.
been smoking it for so long that like I really wasn't getting high, I had thought, but then I stopped. I stopped. And then like one day I was like, oh, I'm just gonna, it was after my last miscarriage. I was like, I'm just gonna smoke a little to like help with the sadness.
Mm,
And that's when I realized, like, oh wow, like it really affects you. Like
yeah.
I felt so slow and
Mm,
so dumb. Like I felt like I couldn't even talk right. And I was
yeah.
like, oh no, like this is, and definitely like the dissociation and the lack, the reason why I was like, I'm going to do this again was because I don't want to feel what I am feeling. Right. And it
Yes. Yeah.
definitely does that. It like turns you off. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I haven't used any weed in, I don't know, I think a little over a year.
Mm,
I have no intention on ever
yeah.
it again. It was always like going to be temporary quitting type of a thing, but now I'm like, yeah, no, it's it just it affects you more than us stoners like to admit.
Totally. Yeah. Agreed. And
One,
I love my stoner friends. I actually have a lot of close friends who are hardcore stoners, and it maybe works for them.
yeah,
So, each to their own, but I've decided it doesn't
yeah.
work for me.
On a Pisces note, did you notice that when you stopped, you started to dream again? Because I was not dreaming when I was smoking. It was just black. And then the second I stopped, the dreams come back. And dreams are
Yeah.
so important because that's how we process our unconscious. And if we're not
Yes.
dreaming,
Yeah.
we're not processing.
Yeah. I've thought about that a lot. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. So I think I got like one or two more left here. So since it's a new moon,
Mhm.
New moons are a time of planting seeds. What dreams are you manifesting for your music in the year ahead? Today you got your first print of your album, so
I did.
very new moon vibes.
Very new moon vibes, yeah.
How did it come out? Is it adorable?
So it's not even the printed version yet. It's the test pressing of it. So there's no like visual on it yet. But it sounds amazing.
Nice.
Sounded perfect. Yeah.
Can't wait. Can't wait
Yes.
to get a copy of that. So what are you manifesting for the year ahead? Right. There's part 2 of the tour. And then are you working on a second album?
Yes, working on new stuff right now, which is super fun. Again, it feels kind of like a blank canvas. And yeah, just feels all exciting and new. I had a really nice kind of time off over the Christmas, New Year period, and I feel like I've just come back now with I'm like ready to go again and feel so excited about all the new stuff. So yeah, a lot of touring, which I'm so excited about, but yeah, a lot of new music, which is so fun.
I'm very excited about that. All right. I did have one last question. So, of all your songs on this album, which one is your favorite? I don't know if that's like having to pick like a favorite child or something.
It is a little. It also often changes. I will like Haunted One was my favorite song for a while, I think because it was the first song that I wrote for the record, so that felt important to me. Wild West was one of my favorites for a while too. I feel like the kind of being a little more stripped back and a little more personal maybe. Hard to Love Me as well. That was one of the ones that was, sorry, I'm like saying them all.
Say them all.
No, I'd say American Beauty right now is my favorite.
Oh, that's a good one. And that one has the like almost famous Penny Lane vibe. Yes. That was, and I also love your like Manic Pixie Dream Girl, which like Penny Lane was one of like the OG Manic Pixie. Dream Girls. Yeah. After my obsession with Samantha and Bewitched in high school, and then I graduated high school, and then it was obsession with like Penny Lane. I had the coat and everything. Penny Lane lifestyle. Not that I was like following bands around or anything like that, but I was like embodying her to a T. And it's so funny because now I'm like almost 40. I'm 38 years old. And I watched that movie recently and I'm like, oh, I think my frontal lobe developed because now I'm like agreeing with the mom. Like, don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs. That's so funny. Oh my God. I've definitely, I mean, I still love it. I also think a lot about there's some questionable parts of that film. But I do love how they center it around Penny Lane, and in the end she does kind of leave that scene, which I think is really cool to go have another adventure elsewhere in Morocco, which I love. But yeah, a lot of the time you're like, girls, like, go and start your own band, go and be a rock star. But then that was the only choice they had at that time. They weren't told that they could pick up a musical instrument and start a band. And you know, as it shows that you need to see role models doing that look like you, to have the courage to often do something. And there just wasn't a lot of females doing a lot of that, you know, forming bands and at that time. So as much as there is frustration in like, go create your own beautiful life, I also get it. They loved the music and they wanted to be close to the music, and all power to them.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah, I loved me some Penny Lane. Yeah, back then it was Janis Joplin, which didn't end well for her. And then of course there was Stevie Nicks, but it was mostly men in the band, her and Christine.
Yeah.
And that's about it in the 70s that I can really think of.
And I mean, you know, Joan Jett, And the
That's like
Runaways
later,
was
like
obviously a
77,
little
79.
later.
Yeah. And then we see
Yeah.
like
There was
Debbie Harry.
Grace. Yes, of
Mhm.
course. Grace, what was her last name? The Jefferson airplane that later became Jefferson
Oh,
Starship.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure her name.
Yes, but
But
she
yeah.
was also, but yeah, it was always, they kind of had to be one of the guys.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a whole lot of them.
No. Yeah, and a
Mm.
lot of my like favorite, because I was like a punk rock kid, so I was really into like early punk 77, 79. And like my favorite punk band is X-Ray Specs, which is a female lead and very angry feminine rage music. They also have a saxophone, which I seem to really like bands that have a saxophone in there.
Mm.
But yeah, I always gravitated to the women, but they are very few and far between until now, and they definitely like led the way for all of you magical, witchy, powerful women out there. And I am just honored to get to watch you
Mm.
unfold before our eyes.
Oh,
Thank you for coming, being here.
thank you for having me. It's been so fun.
Um, All right, tell everybody where's the best place to find you? Is it Spotify? Where are you going to get the most money per stream?
I have no idea. Probably not Spotify.
No, not Spotify. Is it
But if
Apple?
you have Spotify, it's probably Apple or Amazon Music, as much as I'm not a fan
Yeah.
of Amazon right now. Any whatever stuff, whatever you listen to, I will be there. I am on all the streaming platforms. Yeah, find
I
me wherever.
I mostly listen to you over on YouTube. I have like
Mm,
a YouTube playlist.
yes.
Because yeah, I'm not going to pay for the no ads on the Spotify.
Mm,
But yeah, I listen to you over on YouTube. I'm sure you get views for that, I assume.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
And do we know when part two of the tour is yet? Or that's not?
no, we don't, but stay tuned.
We will. Send me a link for your mailing list and I'll put it down below.
Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do. Yeah,
And
sign up to
then,
the mailing list and all the tour announcements will go there first.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Email that to me after this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Iluka,
Thank you. It's been so fun.
tech problems. It was to be expected.
To be expected. Absolutely.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye. See ya.